Good afternoon. It is Sunday afternoon. I just wanted to chime in and share a brief update about the work I am doing in the Senate and what kind of happened over the last week. So I'll try to be brief. I had three bills heard in committee. The first one of those was around funding for our food banks. We heard a lot of testimony, had a great presentation in committee around the need, about how use of food banks and food shelves is increasing. Food insecurity is a reality for many, many families across the state. 20% of Minnesota households rely on resources to get the food that they need. And so funding for our food banks and our food shelves is really critical to be sure that families have the food that they need. Second bill I had was around healthy aging. The bill would encourage school districts to offer curriculum around healthy aging, including dementia, Alzheimer's. This is a bill I worked on in collaboration with the Alzheimer's Association. Really, so it would be grades 6 through 12, offering a curriculum for those students to recognize signs, know how to deal with maybe grandparents who had dementia or Alzheimer's disease, and look at ways to prevent it in themselves. And the third bill I had in the Housing Committee was around community funds for community mediation. This would allow funds and resources for mediation to prevent cases from going into court when there are issues between landlords and tenants, for instance. And upwards of 90% of those cases can be resolved with mediation. It's a great tool. And so allocating some funds to be used for folks across the state for that really would be helpful. It helps to keep people housed. It helps to unburden the courts, and it helps to decrease evictions. It really is win-win. Also, in the last week, I took part in two press conferences. The first was early in the week with the Reproductive Freedom Caucus, and I spoke about the potential impacts of the funding freezes and cuts we are seeing with the NIH funding, which will have really harmful and drastic impacts on studies and research and care for people related to reproductive freedom. And the second was around the federal administration's gutting and elimination of the CFPB, the Consumer Financial Protection Board, which is consumer protection for people. It saves people money. It looks out for people. Without that, people really are at risk. And I spoke in particular about the Minnesota Debt Fairness Act, which we passed last session. I'm really, really proud of that work. It puts in place consumer protections for Minnesotans, one of which is it does not allow your medical debt to be reported to credit bureaus to impact your credit score, because we know medical debt is not like other debt. It should not be treated like other debt. It's not something you choose or you sign up for. None of us chooses to have a heart attack or our appendix rupture or things like that, and anyone could be an accident or diagnosis away from having medical debt. And so Minnesotans are protected. Your medical debt cannot be reported to the credit bureau, but in other states that now is happening as the federal administration, the Trump administration, is rolling back those protections. And so important that we continue the work here. Also, over the week, had lots of meetings with folks, really useful, important meetings with folks from Rochester. One of my favorite things in St. Paul is having meetings with people from Rochester. So I met with teachers and students and med students, mental health care providers, just a number of folks having really good conversations about what people need and impacting the work of our session. So next week will be another busy week. I will hop back on and tell you the bills that I'm working on next week, and as things progress. If you have questions, reach out, and have a good rest of your weekend.